I think the businesses that wind up succeeding are the ones that can stop and have an outer body experience or have some help with that, that says, hey, you're doing great. You need to kind of consider some other options here, because I don't think this is going to get you where you ultimately want to go.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I'm bringing you another giant in the world of business coaching. This podcast is geared toward trainers who are great trainers and want to be great business owners, successful business owners, so that you can build the type of business that creates the lifestyle that you want, instead of ball and chain job that you have to, grind, get you out of that grind. Today's guest is Brian Johnson. He is the founder and owner of Main and Johnson, a Charlotte, North Carolina based business consulting and coaching company aimed at seeing small to medium-sized businesses thrive, not just survive, especially coming out of COVID. Brian is a persuasive and adaptable top performer who is skilled in establishing, managing, and mentoring key executives and business owners, as well as individual contributors in a business. He has a passion for changing the cultural fabric of people, leadership, marketing, and sales in companies by empowering teams to exceed goals. Welcome to the show, Brian. Did I get that right?
You did. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right into it, because like I said, I know you do business coaching, and that's exactly what I think the listeners of this podcast, I know I still benefit from business coaching. And it's nice because you're brand new in the fitness space, because I feel like in the fitness space, we have business coaches for fitness business, but I feel like it's kind of the same kind of three guys that gets mentioned. So it's nice to get an outside perspective and fresh eyes on the fitness business. So I appreciate that. So take us through somebody who's just starting out, like a trainer who's just starting out, thinking of, well, even before they open their business, like say they're working for somebody. I mean, because that's the natural progression. You're working for somebody and you start thinking, well, I can do this better. Or I want to do my own thing. I want to do XYZ. They're not letting me do it here. I want to open my own business. What should they be thinking? What should they be doing? What should they be getting ready for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you got to start with is what's your vision, and not to say that training is training. That's certainly not the case, but obviously it's an industry that's very well built up. It's very well known, and it doesn't mean that everything you have to do has to become like the next CrossFit or something like that. But what is it that you're going to offer to that industry that makes you different and or adds value to that's maybe outside of what you're currently doing? And that's a tough question sometimes to answer, because it's not the same as, hey, if I did it, I'd do it this way, or the guy that I'm working for now, if I could do it, have my own place, this is what I would do. That's usually the incubation period of it. And how does that extrapolate into something that people were willing to come benefit from and pay for, that we can go out and do? So what's the education model? What's the, how are we going to approach that? And I think that's where the starting point tends to be. And then I think you have to kind of check in, what's my tolerance for all the other crap that comes with business that you don't have when you work with somebody else. Like, it's when you're working for somebody else, it's easy to envision what would be great about not doing it. But then you got to realize, now I got to do that same stuff myself that, this guy I was working for, probably I didn't realize he was doing all that, or she was doing all that. Right. And so I think you've got to kind of map out. And I'd say, the best thing is a business plan. Really kind of get you focused on, excuse me, what are I'd say the key steps that I need, the key boxes I need to check before I really want to go out and make that leap. I mean, I know just, from how the training industry works, you can build up a loyal clientele, and that's great. But when you go start a business, you're not the one training them 24/7, or, as you add more people, you can't be the hands-on person, all the time. So you've got a business to run. So you're going to have to hire trainers, bring them in, obviously manage the assets in the business, things like that. And the one thing I think that you probably suck all these podcasts up, and everybody does too, is what am I doing to continue to learn? Because all sorts of physiology and kinesiology things, they're coming out with new, evidence of this and that, and what am I sifting through to be able to kind of answer those questions? Because I can imagine the worst feeling in the world would be you have a customer come in and ask what my thoughts are on this, and I've never heard of it, right? And it's kind of trending or something like that. So
Right.
um, that business plan though will kind of give you that notion of, okay, these are the steps I've got to take and the boxes I need to check that allow me to be commercially viable. And then now it's, that plan being executed that really takes us through. We kind of, not to jump all around, but when we look at businesses, and it's agnostic to what it is, because you're trying to identify a business that has this idea they want to get to here, and as a coach, my job is to help them get there faster. I mean, if I couldn't add any accelerated value in that, then I'm not really sure why you'd hire me, other than just to listen to you complain and all that and vent, right?
Mhm.
So, and it doesn't have to be like I want to be a $5 million company. It could be, man, I'd love to have a really good business that I never have to worry about again, and I only work 25 hours a week. Great, let's accelerate you getting there. But we use an analogy when we try to reach out to business owners all alike, and we kind of uh, an, analogize it, whatever the word is, to an airline, a flight.
Okay.
And because I think most people relate to that, and we see businesses kind of landing in four different spots in their business life cycle. Now there'll be changes they make inside each one, but it's kind of the same four stages of a flight. So you've got your takeoff phase. So if you've ever been on a plane, this is where somebody gets over the speaker and says, um, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taxiing out. Please make sure your seat backs are in their upright and locked position, tray table stowed, bag underneath the seat in front of you, overhead compartment closed. And once that process starts, you can't change that situation. So check all those boxes. The flight attendants are all strapped in too. So nobody's really wandering around the plane. And the reason is if you do, they'll send you back to the beginning because you're not going to get cleared for takeoff. It's the same thing in a startup. Do I have my business plan written? Do I know what kind of funding I need, and is it secured? Do I have a vision for where I'm taking this business and what those milestones look like along the way? They'll probably be wrong, but at least you've planned it out, so you start heading in the right direction. So once you kind of get cleared for takeoff, then the next phase is that ascension phase. And so this is where you're going 0 to 30,000 feet in 10 minutes. And so there, nobody does anything other than listen to headphones and kind of sit back and wait until they hear that ding, once you've hit that level. And when you get to that point, it's interesting because in that flight, everybody's trying to get the same thing done, which is get up to that altitude that you need. And it's the same thing in your business when you start. A lot of people, the mistakes I've seen, or the anxiousness I've seen, maybe that's a better word, because mistakes can also be learnings, but is they want to get to that 5 year mark in year one. And that's just not the way it works. So in year one, or could be even year two, even year three, sometimes that first phase is all about building that business revenue that I can pay my bills, pay myself, pay my employees. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm not wondering if I'm going to have to shut it down at some point. I'm confident it's going to exist. And that's that ascension phase. And so it's no different on a flight. Flights, airlines don't level out at 10,000 feet and say, well, this is good enough. Let's see how this works. Right. So they're going all the way up to 30, whatever that number is for your business. And it is revenue driven. It's, I'm going to be sustainable. I'm going to survive. And once you get out of that mode where survival is no longer your main focus, you can kind of broaden that scope a little. And now you're into more of that cruising altitude. And for most of us, this is where our businesses spend most of their time. Same thing on a flight. I mean, unless you're flying from Charlotte to Atlanta, most of your time is in that cruising altitude phase. And that's, all of a sudden, you hear the buzzer go off, people can get up, use the restroom, they bring the drink cart out, they bring the snacks out, the pilot will say something witty over the speaker, and it just becomes much more relaxed.
Mhm.
And in that phase, that's where a business now can shift its focus to, okay, I'm here and I'm going to serve my customers for the long haul, to what's the ways that I want to differentiate myself immensely over my competition. How do I want to take care of my employees and put things in place that make their livelihoods better? How do I want to take care of my customers in a way where they're never going to want to think twice about leaving? I'm building efficiency and effectiveness in my business at that point. But don't get me wrong, we've all flown on a plane. It's not like you sit at 30,000 feet forever. You might make
Mhm.
adjustments and climb altitude because of turbulence and things like that and adjust your course slightly. But for the most part, you're not being forced to climb 30 more thousand feet to survive.
Mhm.
This is also the same phase that people hit that scale level. where that's kind of where, okay, I've got all the systems in place, I've got all the people in place, I've got everything in place, and we're all tapped out. Now I've got to figure out, if I want to get over that hump, what's that look like and how do I do that?
Mhm.
So that's kind of that main phase that we're in. Most businesses kind of spend a lot of time in that spot until they get to dissension. And I always say it's funny, you can get to 30,000 feet in 10 minutes, but yet when you hear that, we've started our initial descent, you still have an hour to go. It's a real slow, deliberate landing. And there's nothing that says in your business you can't plan out the ending, even if it's 10 years away. Right. And the ending may be I sell and reinvest in something else. Could be I ride off into the sunset and that's it. I'm on a beach somewhere with an umbrella drink and having fun. Or it could be, I've got somebody that I'd love to take this over for me, whether it's a family member or a great employee. And we try to engage businesses there to really focus on what can we do to maximize that valuation of the business, before you either hand it off or sell it. And then if there's somebody taking it on, how do we implement that training so the legacy of that business doesn't have to end when you do, or that sounds terrible, but when you step away from the business, right? So
Yeah.
if businesses can look at things and accept the stage they're in, I think they can really become effective by embracing sort of the boundaries. I mean, not everybody becomes Amazon overnight, but they also had to fight through a lot of things. I'm sure most everybody knows those stories.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what most businesses have to do. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that analogy because it breaks it down into clear stages and the goals for each stage. Because I think a lot of business owners, and I know I've at least fitness business owners, and I've been guilty of this, is that they get short sighted. They just look at, they're just focusing on the takeoff, right?
right.
And they're not thinking about ascension or cruising altitude or the descent. They don't have an exit strategy. They don't start with an end in mind. And so
Exactly.
it's nice if you can start with an end in mind, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Start with like your demographic, your plan, all of that, and then you can and what is going to be your niche, your differentiator,
Right.
and then reverse engineer your business from that point.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that analogy a lot because a lot of people, they don't have an exit plan
Yeah.
at all when they start their business. Um, so let's get into the other thing I wanted to talk about was, and I'm looking over your sheet here, is that not all customers are created equally.
Yep.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, there's two sides to this coin, right? So one, you create your own demographic and you look at your customers, but especially in this industry, not everybody is trying to have a six pack and be out on the beach at 175 pounds. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't. You guys would know this way quicker than I would ever need to say it, but you can't just go out and market unless you really only want to go after the Hollywood bodies and stuff like that. You can't market
Mm-hmm.
it solely that way. So that's the first part, is know that I've got to figure out what range that I want to be in. I mean, there's everything from, intense one-on-one type training to like a Planet Fitness where it's like, hey, we're just not gonna really get involved too much and just put the equipment out there and let you go at it. And I don't know enough about their model to probably comment further than that, but clearly they're not trying to drag in only those that like CrossFit isn't good enough for me type of thing, and they jump in. So know that piece. But then I think the other side is, a lot of times people can get caught up. This happens in business, and it's all driven by individual personality anyways. So I got to believe it happens in the training industry, right? And it's just because my customers pay me a certain amount does not mean that's what the value of having them is. Could be more, could be less. It could be, we kind of go through an exercise a lot of times with our customers, my customers, around their customers, and we call it kind of customer segmentation modeling. And basically you kind of come up with your 5 or 6 key criteria about a customer, like, hey, I'm trying to put it in these terms. They pay the right price, yes, but every month I seem to have to call them because their credit card bounces. Okay, that's annoying. Then, okay, when they have an appointment, they show up 15 minutes late. That's annoying. And then, and you create that list. And then as you're thinking about it and you list your customers out, you can actually go through and give them a score, almost like a 10 out of 10 versus a 1 out of 10. And when you tally that up, what we wind up doing is we kind of segment them A, B, C, D, and F. And the thought would be, I mean, if you've got somebody that, yeah, maybe they pay the the fee that we're asking for, but they're always late. Their credit card never seems to work right, or they always want to switch a card. Like, those things have a cost. And I don't think people account for that, which is they're 15 minutes late and then I only get 45 minutes with them because I've got another appointment. I'm trying to do an hour's worth of effectiveness in 45 minutes. And if I can't do that, they may say this doesn't work. And it may just be because they were late to begin with, but that doesn't help you. And so you can't just treat everybody like, oh, they're a customer. They're my top priority. And I'm never going to let them leave. Well, that's actually not true. I mean, best thing I would say is when you get your F customers identified, I would start figuring out ways to show them the door, to the point where I just say this: the best gift you can give your competitors is your worst customers. So
I like that. The
yeah, so
best guess
send them
gift
on
you can
down.
give, yeah, is your worst clients. I like that a lot. So, what are some ways that, I mean, because there are definitely, like you said, pain in the ass clients.
Sure.
Like a perfect example is, we're coming out of COVID. I have a training studio here, and we lost about 40% of our membership through COVID, and we're coming back now. But we raised our prices, which is another thing I want to talk to you about. But we had this one client, pain in the ass client, and they contacted me, and they're going to another place, and they said, I really want to come back to Catalyst. Mm-hmm. He goes, but this is the max that I want to pay. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you like Catalyst and that you want to come back, but these are our prices.
Yep.
I'm not going to discount, because I find that in the past, when I've discounted people or given them handshake deals, they turn into the worst clients.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because they don't have any value for your service. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's 100% true.
So what are some ways that you can get those clients out the door without being an asshole?
Yeah. I don't think it would work too well if you kind of went to them and said, this is my price, and if this is what you want to pay, here's a picture of what you're going to look like. I mean, you probably can't flash that around, but I mean, I think you have to hold firm, because I'd say this is, one, you kind of look at the psychology of selling and marketing, right? They're coming to you because they've already made up in their mind, I'm not going to get what I want by doing it on my own. Mm-hmm. So maybe they don't choose you, and that could be what happens. And that may not be the desired result. Maybe you want to figure out a way. There's other things you can do, but in the end, if other people are willing to pay that value for what you're providing, you're doing them a disservice by charging this person less and giving them the same amount of effort and energy. Yeah. And so I think that goes back to the background work and some of the upfront planning to say, okay, if this is who I'm targeting, what's their price range? And if you throw a price out, and maybe you're going to get people that you're not targeting and you think that's great, but in the end, there may not be enough of those to work with that price. Now, depends. I mean, people that charge a premium for things, they still get customers. I mean, I still see people driving Jaguars around. I still, I mean, it's there. It's just, you've got to understand who is it that you're targeting and where do they fit in that? And, it's a different, as a business owner, I'll tell you, the hardest thing in the world is when you're in that ascension phase, to turn away somebody who's willing to pay you something, because all those somethings add up to something. And, to hold your ground and say, no, I'm sorry, this is a $400 an hour gig or whatever the price is. Mm-hmm. That's what you got to do. So,
yeah. And I agree with that. And I've learned my lesson, because like I said, I've given discounts and I've given handshake deals, and I've regretted it every single time. Yep. Every single time, without exception. So I just don't do it anymore. So these are our prices, because you're exactly right. It's a disservice to the other clients. And then they tend to value it less. So they tend to be the squeakiest wheel.
Yeah.
So, but what I was asking is, like, when you go through and do that membership audit and you find your ABCDEFs, right? Mm-hmm. How do you show your F's out the door in a diplomatic way?
Yeah, I mean, so this is how I would start it in a business, and then we'll see if we can bring it back down to the training industry, right? Okay. We would normally say, first thing you do is you just tell them, like, I'm sorry, because of all of these things, you have it's basically a sit down, quarterly review, whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. You're always late paying, or you're always difficult to get through. You're always late showing up. So I'm not even sure that you're committed to what we're talking about right now,
Mhm.
and then whatever the other criteria are, I usually go back because you'll find out real quick what matters the most to them and say, if either you've got 30 or 60 days to become a D customer and whatever that criteria is, or I'm just going to raise your price an extra $100 an hour to cover all my other costs. And you usually find out real quick how committed they are, because if they're a price buyer, they already think they're paying too much,
Mhm.
and if they're willing, if they're like, whoa, wait a second, I got 30 days to get this right, you'll change them real quick. I mean, you guys know it's the same thing that I do a little bit too, which is you're working with people that you have to kind of muster through motivation and things like that. But they came to you because they wanted something, right?
Mhm.
So if you can rekindle that, then please do. If you can't, if they're just like, yeah, I'll be on time, and then they're not again, I mean, it's like being in a bad relationship. I mean, how much do you want to put up with before you have to make a change?
Absolutely.
And tearing that band-aid off may hurt. That money may be needed, but you're going to feel better about your business as well when you've got the right customers.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that just like you have to, you literally have to train your customers. You have to train them for their health and fitness, but you also have to train their behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So if they're, like you said, late pay, or if they're showing up late for sessions, you can't simply can't allow that, because then you train them to do that and
Correct.
continue to do that, and then that begins to erode your culture,
Yep.
because it bleeds over into other clients because they see it, and other employees see it, team members see it, and so it just slowly starts to erode your culture. So I like that, having that sit down, come to Jesus, and that's not an easy conversation to have for a lot of owners.
No.
But I think if you want to have like good customers and good culture, be a good leader of your business and have a good business, I think it's something that you have to do. You have to get comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations.
Well, one thing too, Jim, I'd recommend, if people are, if that's not their favorite thing, is to have that confrontational discussion. It's all about positioning. So when you sit down and you have them sign that membership agreement, or they basically kind of come on and commit to something, I mean, there should be a list of expectations of a customer given right to them, and say, when you're late, it's a 45-minute session. You don't get to push my next client out 5 minutes. In fact, you don't get to push them out 1 minute. What are all the things that I want to make sure that you're committing to as well? Because in this relationship, it's not just one-sided.
Yeah, I like that. And that's part of that, kind of setting the tone right up front, to
Exactly.
training them to the behavior that you want.
Yeah.
So I mean, because you want them to get results, but in order
Yeah,
for get the
absolutely.
results, they have to mark some boxes too.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can always pull that sheet out 6 months later when they're not doing it and say, come on, this is what you said you were going to do. What's the issue? Maybe there is something wrong. Maybe somebody lost their job and they're just having a hard time getting up out of bed. But if you don't know, you
Mhm.
don't know,
Right.
and you can make exceptions, but don't make it the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have those conversations, then you don't know
You
either.
never know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are some effective ways to increase your price in the business? Because I know in the fitness industry, pre COVID, large group training was the main thing. That's what everybody was doing. That's where the biggest margins were, all of that. But coming out of COVID, large group training, I mean, who knows? It'll probably make a comeback. But for right now, everybody's thinking about switching to the small group and personal training model.
Hmm.
So that requires an overhaul, but also a price change. So,
Sure.
what are some effective ways to increase your prices in your business?
Yeah. I mean, one thing to be honest, I try to encourage my customers to do. I do it myself, and that's basically every year we just tell them up front, we will increase our prices every year. And the reason is because some people are like, well, what if costs aren't bad, or costs have gone down, or that doesn't matter, that's not why we're doing it anyways. We're increasing price because we're in the process of investing in ourselves so that we can be better for you, and you're going to get better value next year as well. So that expectation is sort of out there and up front. But that there's a difference between like what you're describing, which is, okay, we're increasing our membership fee $10 a month, versus, okay, we're going from having 40 people in a room to 5 or to 1, and now I've got to bring in a whole lot more trainers to be able to carry this load, or whatever the cost implications are. The value is different too. So if there's 5 people in a room, you're certainly giving each person a lot more attention than you are, doing aerobics in the front of the room and somebody's following you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the you can accelerate their results like that. And if that's explained and they understand that I'm going to get a benefit from this, this is that value. I mean, it's got to be something that you've researched and articulated. And we normally see businesses that go out and they're very concerned about that price conversation. But in the end, what are they really trying for? I think you said it earlier. They're looking for results. I mean, if you sat down and told somebody, hey, if you gave me $2,000 and I could get you, this is, kind of, I wouldn't advertise this and say, go say it. But like, if you just came up to somebody and said, hey, if for $2,000, would you, and I could give you, a 15-pound less body that's, 11% body fat or less. Let's just say you said that. Would you pay it? I bet most people would. I bet the difference is they don't know, or they're not 100% confident that going from point A to point Z, all those points in between are going to add up to that number. So I'm not saying I would go out and present it like that, but when you go back to them and you say like, hey, instead of doing these group sessions where you're kind of on your own to show up, you're really not held totally accountable. And then you've got to put in the effort during there because nobody's going to lean over your shoulder and say, you're not working hard enough. Like when that changes to the person that's got four other people in their room for an hour, now they're going to have, they can be seen. You can't hide. And that's what people are actually paying for. They want the result. They need the accountability to get there. Or they wouldn't be seeking out a personal trainer. And they just need to know what that looks like. What is that going to cost me, and what's the plan to get there? So I don't.
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer because you're actually changing your business model.
Mm-hmm.
So price is actually, it's apples and oranges at that point.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you're changing your business model, I think people understand that and they can probably see the value. It's easier to communicate the value add in that. But if your services haven't changed dramatically, then you just kind of say up front that we're going to raise our prices every year.
I mean, it's what works for your bottle. I guess I'd say it this way: if somebody, let's say you're going to raise your price $15 a month,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody was coming to your gym for a year and they're getting results, are they going to stop over that $15? That's really the question being asked.
Gotcha.
and
Yeah.
and that's why I say really like there's studies across all industries, and basically it's some number around 10% of people actually make a buying decision based on price. That means 90% of the rest of them decide for another reason. Could be a cute trainer, it could be, I've seen other people come through and a great result, or my friend goes here. There's a million other reasons, but only 10% of the time is it actually because of the price. And that's where you've got the models out there that accommodate the price buyers. No contract, $10 a month. That's perfect for people that aren't really
Mm-hmm.
committed and don't want to spend the money either. They're checking a box saying I go to a gym.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Yep.
they're not checking the I'm healthy box necessarily. They could be making that out of there.
Mhm.
I'm just saying they're choosing to do that route for a reason.
Right. I gotcha. And then I had a previous guest on the show, Leslie Lyons, and she runs a pole dancing studio. And she's a trip, but basically she got into the price game. And it's a race to the bottom, right? When you
Yeah.
start competing on price. So she was charging her clients $49 a month for, I think, unlimited or 3 times a week or something like that. And she wasn't making any money. She literally couldn't keep the lights on. They shut off the lights
Yeah.
because she couldn't pay the bill. So, after crying and soul searching and everything, she just went to her clients. She said, look, if you guys really like this, I'm going to have to dramatically raise my price or we're not going to be here. So she went from
Yep.
$49 a month to $129 a month overnight and was able to maintain 80% of her clientele.
Yeah.
So then she had more revenue with less clients.
Yeah.
Customer service usually goes up when that happens. So yeah, I guess it all depends on how you present it and the value that your clients see in it.
Yeah. Well, you look at that, even say that same example, and this is kind of how we talk price with businesses. So let's say she had 100 customers and they were paying $49, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she raises it to 129. I'm not going to try to do the math here while we're recording, but each person's basically paying what is that, $80 more a month. Is
Hmm.
that right? Yeah, $80 more a month, but she loses 20 of those 100 customers. Well, 80 of them just paid $80 more a month, and now she's got 20 more spots to go sign up $129 customers.
Hmm.
So that's where you look at it as like, yes, if I can absorb the loss and make sure that you can, and that's actually an exceptionally larger number. I mean, 20% versus 10, which would mean she probably had more price buyers in there than she was supposed to. But either way, the ones that were committed, she moved that price up and boom, now she's got, like you said, a lot of the things. Customer service is easier because you know, you've got more funds to deal with, you've got a few less clients. Then when
Hmm.
you go out and try to grow and you invest, you can be very deliberate, but you're coming at a price point where it pays for itself.
Yeah.
So it is tricky, but if you're right, the one thing you said is if you start getting into the battle of lowering price, then it's a very hard battle to come back from.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you can become a commodity, you know.
Correct.
You're just like the other guy. But if you can find some way to stand out and be, stand out from the crowd and become an expert or go deep into a niche, then you can charge more actually.
Absolutely.
And people, and I found, I'm shocked at the number of studio owners that I talk to that when they raise their prices, they get more business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have no experience as a pole dancer, but I would say, that's kind of one of those things that if you ever wanted to pull that out at a party, you're going to have to be pretty darn good at it. And do you want the $49 lesson or the $129 lesson if it's going to be my embarrassment for the rest of my life
Yeah,
on video,
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
there are a lot of people that, hey, if I'm committed to something, I don't want the good, I want the great, and I'm
right.
willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I like that. All right, and then one of the things that you wrote down here is my favorite is getting out of your own way in business. Now, I have an idea what you mean by that, but I'm interested to see what you have to say about that, getting out of your own way in business.
I have to do it all the time as well. I mean, especially when, and we'll kind of go back to the start. So, like when you start out your own business, right? You've got your own ideas and everything. There will come a point when you've run out of all of your ideas and your business is at that point where it's sort of topped out. This doesn't mean you can't think of more. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying there's a lot of people that will run into that brick wall 3 or 4 times before they realize they're hitting a wall. Right. And so, how do you get yourself out of your own way? Like you've created this path, which is fantastic. It's gotten you this far, but it's rare that that original path takes you everywhere you want to go. You have to take that step back, whether it's, it for somebody, the example for a trainer. Okay. I might get a client that's for 5 years gone to the gym every single week as scheduled, eating fairly well, like they're not running through the drive through getting the dollar burger, and they came to me because they just kind of felt like I've exhausted all of my effort trying to do this on my own. I need to get out of my own way and hire somebody to help. And that's where the trainer comes in and breaks that plateau, because now you've got outside perspective looking at where you're at as well, and helping you formulate where you need to go next. I mean, I'm sure as a trainer, you'd much prefer the person that shows up to your, I'm sure nobody's going to turn anybody away that fits this category, but you'd prefer somebody who has tried and has not succeeded on their own, because they're already going to know your value. They already know you're helping me. If you have somebody that's never worked out a day in their life and they come in, one, that's probably a much harder person to get where they want to go. But the other part is they may not know that they can't do it without you yet. And then when the price goes up, they're kind of like, I'll try this on my own. I think I've done this for 6 months. I think I know exactly what a trainer does anyways. And then they leave. So you've got to look at it in all those lights. And the point is, though, I think the businesses that wind up succeeding are the ones that can stop and have an outer body experience or have some help with that, that says, hey, you're doing great, you need to kind of consider some other options here, because I don't think this is going to get you where you ultimately want to go, going the same way. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that philosophy a lot because I think it's important for me anyway. When I was working on improving my leadership skills,
mhm.
I was purposeful in not surrounding myself with yes people, right?
Yeah,
People who just co-sign on my shit, right?
yeah,
I wanted critical thinkers. I wanted people who could play devil's advocate, who could give me other lenses to view it through, things like that, so that we could approach it as a team. instead of just my way. And I think the other important point of that is, like you said, does come a point where you're in cruising altitude, like you
Yep.
said, or and things are comfortable. You've got your routine. It's easy to get stuck there, right?
Yeah.
But if you get stuck there, then it's a road to nowhere, or can be a road to nowhere. So then that's where you bring in a business coach, or you hire somebody. And I had Mike Arcee on the show, and he said that when you get to that point and you hire somebody who's going to teach you something. Hire
Yep.
somebody who can do something that you can't do, or do something better than you,
Right.
that
Yep.
adds value. So what would be some examples? Obviously, a business coach.
Yep.
So what are some other examples?
I mean, you can, if you've got somebody that you respect, that's kind of knows your journey a little bit more than others, and maybe
Mhm.
is or isn't in your space, getting like a mentor or something. I mean, yeah, that maybe takes away what we would provide, but the point isn't necessarily like, hey, come get a business coach. But the point is, you got to shake it up a little bit. And I think your example of hiring somebody, like if you get to that point where you want to grow and you can afford to do so, that's the point to bring in somebody who's not going to have your perspective, because you've already proven mine gets me this far. That's great. But yours plus somebody else's might get you 3 times as far. And whether that's somebody you bring in from the outside and pay to help, or that's somebody you hire on the inside, or it's just somebody that can look at you objectively and not be the yes man and tell you, no, no, Jim, no, you can't do it that way, man. That's old stuff. You talked about that 5 years ago. It's a new world now. You
Yeah.
know, I don't think you have to give up on your values, your vision, any of those things. You just may have to figure out a different way to get all of those things.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Brian, this has been great, man.
I
I
appreciate it.
love.
It's been fun.
I wish we had more time. I would love to reserve the right to have you back on the show, because I feel like we just scratched the surface here. I feel like there's a whole lot that we can still talk about as far as business coaching, leadership, decision making, all of those things.
Yeah.
But now we get to my favorite part of the show, and it's where we get some of the best answers, I feel.
Okay.
And I still take the approach that it's my podcast, so
Right.
I'm going to do it. So, but we peek behind the curtain of what is Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
So my first question is, what has been your most successful failure? And what I mean by that is, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from it that propelled you to greater success down the road.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's enough of them. I shouldn't be too torn here. I'd probably, for me, it might be going back um, to my college days. And I came in, I was the one that never had to work all that much to get good grades. And I kind of decided I'm gonna, just ride this out. I'll get some great job, stuff like that. And as I got into it, I started to see that those grades weren't coming in, they were the way they were, and I hadn't really developed the study habits. And when I looked back at it, I had opportunities where people were trying to, partner with me to help them study, where I could have learned that. And I wound up not maybe getting the start that I had anticipated right out of school. And as I look back, it's kind of the learning was, you can't assume the way it's actually kind of like what we were just talking about, but the way I did it before in high school and in grade school and really every other school isn't going to work when you get to the point where you're working with more elite people that aren't going to just be okay with getting by. And that was probably the thing that after that, I mean, my career kind of really jumped after that, because I got out, got started, but I was very hungry to kind of get back on that you know track of feeling really strong that I'm helping to drive myself forward, not just casually waltzing through everything because everybody's going to make it okay for me.
Yeah, I like that. Somebody said, well, it was Ryan Holiday said, past success can be the enemy of continued success.
Yep.
Right. I like that quite a bit. Okay. And so you had to develop some new study habits. It's good that you were able to recognize that and grab those.
Yeah, and it really forced, you kind of went back, and all along I was probably a bit of a learner to begin with,
Uh-huh.
but you got some success and then you kind of coast, and then so you had to reestablish that. So you're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. And then my next question is, since you've been in the business coaching, what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming? And COVID is exempt because nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, I would say so. I started this kind of right before, well, not right before COVID, but I mean before COVID. And a lot of what I heard was, why do I need to have somebody help me grow my business? My business is growing, and I think the thing is, I got into it and started to really peel back the layers of that. I kind of started asking the question. And this worked for my business. Was, are you growing, or are you just participating in a growing market? Because it's
Mm,
easier to collect money when people are waving it around than when you have to go find it. And if you think you're growing just because your revenue goes up, look around you, everybody else is as well. And how do you grasp growth if it stopped raining money in your front yard? How do you grab it if you have to go out and get it? And I think that conversation is very applicable for what became COVID, because I was just really surprised that there were so many people that were just kind of content with it's growing. I don't want to make it grow faster. It's good enough. And I understand people want lifestyle businesses too. There's nothing wrong with that at all. If that's what you want, that's great. But those aren't the same. Those same people were the ones that had the aspirations to be great. And, they're stopping because it's good. And that's kind of one of the things I found, that I was really surprised that growth was almost an assumption, not something I had to go work for.
yeah, I like that. I've never heard that. So are you growing your business, or are you just participating in a growing market? And if the
Yeah.
market tanks, then what happens to your
Yeah.
business?
If the pie keeps getting bigger for you, or if the pie gets bigger, everybody's slice gets bigger. But
Right.
it's the same opposite reaction when it gets smaller.
Yes. Yes.
So
Okay. That's a great answer. Thanks. I'm definitely going to chop that up for some promos. That's a great
there you
answer.
go.
And then, my last question is, where do you go for your personal and professional development?
Yeah, so I have two coaches myself, and one of them is more familiar with actually coaching. The other one is not, is actually totally outside of it, and just kind of what I mentioned. Somebody that you trust that can give you objective feedback, but knows you well enough to kind of know some more of the personal side. So that's one. I mean, obviously, I listen to amazing podcasts like this. I always try to interject. I mean, in what I do, it's the same. I mean, as in the personal training industry, you got to keep ahead of what your customers know. Same
Mhm.
thing for me. I mean, I can't have all my customers talking about this new growth strategy that's been out there for 5 years and I've never heard of it. So
Right.
I'm always kind of searching, trying to plug in, picking books here and there. I'm not much of a reader by page flipping, but much more of an audio reader. That's my learning
Mhm.
style. So anytime I'm in the car or something like that, if I want to pop that on, I try to maximize my time that way. So those are probably the best ways. But I mean, probably the most impactful are the direct relationships with the coaches.
Yeah. And almost to a person, every person that I've had on the podcast said the same thing:
Yeah.
mentorships, coaching. That is the key to their growth, because then it, like you said, all the things that we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
It just opens up your mind to new things. Well, Brian, this has been great, man. So where can people go to get in contact with you if they want to reach out to you, hire you, learn more, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I always love meeting business owners. If nothing less, to just have a good chat. Best way probably to reach me would be our website, www.businessconsultingcharlotte.com. You'll see everything that we kind of do and engage with businesses there, big and small. You could email me directly. It's B Johnson at main and johnson.com. And then we're also out on LinkedIn, Facebook, on social media and stuff. So I think there's enough Brian Johnsons out there on LinkedIn. So good luck. But I
Right.
think it's
Like Jim
slash,
Adams. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Slash 28120. I think that's, they tie to your zip code or something. So
Okay.
that's where you could find us too. So
Okay. And all of those links will be in the show notes. Just go to trainerjim.net, click on this episode of the podcast, and all the links to contact Brian will be right there. Brian, thanks again, man. And I will probably reach out to you again soon to get you back on the show so that we can dive a little bit deeper into some of this stuff.
That'd be great, Jim. I really enjoyed myself and would love to come back and chat again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man.